Hi, everybody. It's great to see such a big crowd here tonight to the 9th Annual National Agenda Speaker Series. We're here thanks to the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication, where I'm the Associate Director, with support from the Office of the Provost, the College of the Arts and Sciences, and the Division for Student Life. Thank you so much for all the support we've gotten. This year's theme is Direction Democracy. You just watched the video. We'll be looking at where we're at, where we've been, and where we're going in this 240-plus year experiment that is uniquely American democracy. The CPC is a nonpartisan organization, and we've featured speakers across the spectrum. You can find our podcasts, transcripts, videos, and our complete lineup at cpc.udel.edu. I'd like to remind our audience that civil dialogue is vital to the success of National Agenda, so let's agree to be candid but also courteous of each other's views. We will have an audience Q&A at the end of our talk, so if you wrote a question in the lobby before this event, your question might be selected to be asked at the end of the event. So let's get to business. Tonight, Chris Christie served as the 55th governor of the state of New Jersey from January 2010 to January 2018. Prior to his tenure as governor, he was presidentially appointed United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, serving as a chief federal law enforcement officer. He graduated from the University of Delaware with a BA in political science in 1984 and obtained his law degree from Seton Hall, University School of Law in 1987. His recently published book, Let Me Finish, Trump, the Kushners, Bannon, New Jersey, and the Power of In-Your-Face Politics, which is for sale in the lobby, was published earlier this year. The first 50 copies he has signed. I don't know if those are still available, but make sure you get one if you can. Christie's popularity has publicly risen and fallen over his career, and he's here tonight to talk about politics and democracy in the Trump era. Please welcome back Blue Hen, Chris Christie. Thank you.
Sure.
So I thought we might start talking about your experience here at UD.
It's the first time I'm on the stage at Mitchell Hall, I can guarantee you that. No acting in my background.
Well, thinking about your own experience at UD and your experience in public office, how would you advise current UD students, you've talked to a few of them tonight before this event, and college students broadly, about getting involved in public service? What do they need to do now? What do they need to know now if they want to contribute to public service?
They don't need to do anything or know anything now other than what's in their heart. I mean, public service at its very best is about you learning and understanding what you believe in your heart and then putting that into action when you get the opportunity to have authority that's given to you by the people of the place where you live. And so I don't like people who are sitting here right now plotting out their future in great specificity. Like if you want to get into public life, I had a conversation with a student tonight about that, and I said, show up. It's about showing up. Go work on campaigns, help people, show up at events. And believe me, the cream rises to the top. People will eventually look at you and say, so what do you want to do? Like, you've been here 8 times. Like, you want to be an operative? You want to be a candidate? What are you interested in? People want folks to be involved in public life, but they want folks who are there genuinely and for the right reasons. And that's why you don't need to learn anything now except what you believe. Keep your ears open now during these years especially. Get as many different points of view, listen to as many points of view as you can, and then decide in your heart what it is you really believe, and go get it. And there's nothing that should be able to stop you except for you. And so that's the way I would go about it.
All right.
The way I did go about it.
Well, thinking about your time here as a political science major, one professor seemed to have a great impact on your life and your career. You once described Professor Jim Soules as a continuing influence on your life. What is it about Professor Soules and the University of Delaware that had such an impact on you and your political career?
Well, two divisible things, right? Let's talk about Dr. Soules first. he cared. He really cared about his students. And not just what you did in the classroom, but what you were doing outside of the classroom and who you wanted to become. And he was always there for advice for you and help. And I did a senior thesis project with him my senior year that was like his offer to me. He said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we got to work together all your senior year? Come up with an idea and let's write about it. That was kind of the way he was. And the story I told some of the students in class earlier today was that we kept in touch over the years after I left here in 1984. And when I was running for governor in 2009, near the end of the campaign, in the last week, I came in from a long day of campaigning, came back to the campaign quarters, and my staff said, listen, you've got a full volunteer phone bank tonight. It would really mean a lot to them if you would go in and just, say hello and say thank you. And I was beat, but there's people who are in there making phone calls for you. You go in and you say hello. And I went into the room, and there's a bunch of people on cell phones talking. And so you hear all kinds of voices. But then I heard one particular voice. And he never called to tell me he was coming. He arranged it with a mutual friend of ours. He drove up to New Jersey, and he was sitting there with his southern accent in New Jersey. So who y'all voting for? I'm thinking to myself, this is probably not going well, Jim. But, and I walked over to him, and I said to him, Dr. Soules, what are you doing here? And he said, I can't count on you to tell me the truth about what's going on up here. I came up here to see myself and talk to voters. And I remember walking him out to the car that night as he was leaving to drive back with this friend of mine to Delaware. And I said to him, I can't believe you did this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And he just looked at me and said, I love you. And he said goodbye, and he got in the car and left. There were a few professors here, right? Soules was the first one I met. He was my academic advisor. He's the one who kind of renewed my interest in politics, that I really wanted to do it. The other two professors that had a huge influence on me here were Professor Oliver, who taught foreign policy and was an incredibly serious dude. And I didn't know quite how to take him in the beginning, but over the time where I took a number of his classes, he definitely taught me, a lot about listening. He was a good listener, and you wanted to listen to him. And the third one is here. I just spotted him. And he's the one who got me into law school. I mean, literally got me into law school. I took his civil liberties classes. I think it was like 401 and 402, right? And Jim McGee is here. And he was an extraordinary inspiration in that he encouraged you to be yourself and to listen to what he was saying. And he clearly had a point of view, but he was encouraging all of us to think, to really think. He was my first law school class, years before I ever entered law school. And I remember after a while, I didn't take notes in his class. I just sat there and listened. And because I was so interested in what he was saying, what he was teaching us. And then he wrote a letter of recommendation for me for law school. And it's one of the nicest letters that's ever been written about me. And these days, definitely the nicest letter that's ever written about me. But one of the things he said was, I watch him in class and he doesn't take notes because he's really listening. That's the kind of student you want in your school. And so I'm so glad you're here tonight, Dr. McGee. And he is an inspiration. So for the students I talked to this afternoon, I said to you, there are people you're going to meet here who are friends for life. And it's not just the other students. At a place like this, it's the faculty too. And you'll find certain faculty members that I guarantee you, I hate to say this to Jim, but I'm out of here 35 years now. And we still correspond with each other. We still communicate with each other. We're old people, so we use Facebook. And not all the other newfangled stuff. And there's no doubt that those three men had the biggest influence on me when I was here. And the school is a place that gave me the greatest gift of my life, which is my wife. And I met her here, and for all of you who are either with someone now or not with someone now, you could take this however you like, but we were friends dating other people consistently for the first 3 years that I knew her. And this is how shallow guys are. I'll tell you this story. So we had been friends. We ran for student government together. She was on my ticket. I was the student government president. And she went away for winter session to London and to Paris. And I was in the Deer Park on that weekend. Yeah, it was still there then too. I was at the Deer Park, and I was sitting there in that weekend between winter session and spring semester. And I saw this woman had her back to me, and she was dancing on the dance floor. And she had like short hair, like in a bob, and she was dancing. And I'm like, she looks good. Man, look at her. I'm looking at her, and all of a sudden she turns around, and it was Mary Pat. Now, when she left to go to London, she had hair halfway down her back. And all of a sudden, she came back with this short haircut, and she looked completely different to me. And I was like, I'm walking her home tonight. And that's what happened. We sat, we talked. I said, I'll walk you back. She lived in the Towers. Good walk from the Deer Park. Long enough, but not too long. And we had been dating other people the entire time, and I asked her out for the next night. And she said, really? Which is not encouraging if you're a guy. And I said, yeah, really. And she said, okay, I'll go out with you. And that was February of 1984, and we have been together ever since. So it's a great gift that this place gave me. On top of all the other experiences, the greatest gift they gave me was my wife, who has been, in every sense of the word, from that moment and even before, a full partner in my life. And I'm very fortunate. And I wish she was here tonight. I sent her a picture as I was walking down the mall of Memorial Hall, because it looks so great tonight.
It's the green now.
Yeah, I understand. Used to be the mall, now it's the green. I understand. I'm not going to try to do it. I'm not screwing up the lingo. But I took the picture of it because I wanted her to come tonight, and she had something else she had to do and couldn't come. So I took the picture, and the caption I put underneath it just was "Where We Began," and texted it to her. Now, this is my wife, who's a finance major and a very cut and dry person in many ways, so I've gotten absolutely no response to that, by the way, so far. I got more response from the ladies in the front row and the second row than I got from my own wife. But that's marriage, everybody. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on the day.
All right. Well, enough softball questions.
All right.
Gov.
Want to get to politics now?
Let's get into this.
Really tough. I'm passing them to McGee. I'm telling you right now.
And thank you for
Stay limber
being
out there,
here.
Jim.
Democrats won big yesterday in Kentucky and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the election results from yesterday portend for 2020?
Not much. They're very localized races. So in Kentucky, if you look at the returns, there were 6 statewide races. Republicans won 5 of the 6. Matt Bevin, the governor, who I know and served with, was not a very popular guy in Kentucky. He was kind of caustic and abrasive. And this will tell you everything you need to know about Kentucky. He's caustic, abrasive, and he only lost by 5,000 votes out of 1.3 million. And every other Republican down the line statewide won. It's Kentucky. Donald Trump won it by 30 points in 2016. So I don't think it tells us much of anything except that Andy Beshear, and now you know when you're getting old, his father was the governor when I became governor of New Jersey, Steve Beshear. They're really nice guys. And so they were a very nice contrast to Bevin. Bevin's a lot of things. Nice guy would not be one of the things you would call him. But the Beshears are very nice men. And I think that contrast killed Bevin. And Virginia, I think Virginia's a blue state now. I think with the predominance of government workers, especially in the northern part of the state, in the Washington suburbs, you've seen consistently since President Obama won it in 2008, that's been going more and more blue. They've had 2 Democratic governors now since Bob McDonnell left office, and it seems like they've been kind of inexorably marching towards being a blue state. So I wasn't completely shocked about Virginia either. On the other hand, in New Jersey, Republicans actually picked up seats. We had just legislative races like Virginia, and New Jersey Republicans picked up 3 seats yesterday. So, but again, that was all very localized issues. There's some real tax sensitivity. We have a governor now, my successor, who's raised taxes pretty significantly, and there's some backlash and sensitivity to that. So I don't think it's as much about what's going to happen in a year from now.
Well, I think what's interesting about the Kentucky race, and I'll admit here that I grew up in Kentucky, is that there's this idea that all politics is local, and what Bevin was doing in Kentucky was to make politics national. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is a trend that is politics still local, or can people now run on just a Trump ticket?
Bashir won. Bad strategy. But it was the only strategy he had left to him because he was unpopular locally. So if you're unpopular locally, you want it to be a national race. Like, if you're Matt Bevin, you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm underwater, Trump's plus 30, I'll tie myself to Trump and hope that he's enough of a float that he can get me above water. It was not his preferred strategy because all politics is local still, especially in off-year elections. But he couldn't win on his own. The only chance he had to win was to tie himself to Trump. But Kentuckians, in a majority, rejected it and said, no, we want the guy who we like, and we want the guy who's talking about our issues, not impeachment and all the other things that are going on in Washington. So I think you're right, and it's a failed strategy.
Okay.
He's moving out of the governor's mansion. That lets you know that you lost. The staff starts bringing you boxes and stuff. It's not good.
Let's talk about President Trump.
Oh, I never thought that would come up. Great.
When you were running against Trump in the Republican primary, you noted in your book, which again is available in the lobby.
Very good. Nice plug. Thank you.
Thank you. From a stylistic perspective, he was everything I was, but on jet fuel. He was brash, he was direct, he was in your face. I was doing all the things I normally did, yet he was still dominating. How do you explain the early and continued popularity of Trump among his supporters? Why didn't you generate that same kind of enthusiasm among supporters if you have kind of the same tactic? What's different?
Well, let's start off with he's a TV star, right? So he comes in with 100% name ID. Everybody in America knew who Donald Trump was. Most people knew who I was, but not everybody. Everybody knew he was. And I'll give you the best way to explain what happened in Iowa and New Hampshire in 2016 vis-a-vis me and Donald Trump is this anecdote. My wife was going door to door in New Hampshire, and she went up to a Republican household, knocked on the door. Nice woman in her 60s answered the door. She said, "Hi, I'm Mary Pat Christie. I wanted to give you some literature about my husband." And she said, "Oh my goodness, you're married to Governor Christie?" She said, "Yes, I am." She goes, "Oh dear, come inside." So Mary Pat's like, "Yeah, all right." Here we go." So she goes in, and the woman says to her, "Oh my gosh, we love your husband. He is so smart and articulate and honest. Oh, I mean, we're voting for Trump, but we hope that Trump makes your husband vice president or attorney general." And Mary Pat said, wait a second. Can I just ask you, if you think my husband is smart and articulate and honest, why are you voting for Trump? And she reached over and grabbed Mary Pat's hand like she was consoling her, and she goes, "Oh dear, we don't need another politician." That summarizes 2016. That summarizes why he beat everybody in the Republican field and why he beat Hillary Clinton. A majority of people in this country felt like politics was broken, that they had trusted other politicians like George W. Bush and Barack Obama to fix it. They hadn't, And they said, hey, isn't that the guy who fires everybody on TV? And he's a billionaire, right? Let's give him a shot. I'm telling you, that's what it was. And I was on the ground watching it happen. It was completely foreign to me. I could not understand how people were going in the direction they were going. But you could feel it. And so, that's what happened. I mean, I think my approach was exactly the right approach at exactly the wrong time. And, that's why people ask me, like, after you lose, like, how long does it take you to get over it? It took me a weekend. And the reason it only took me a weekend was because I wouldn't have done another thing differently. It wasn't like I was sitting there saying to myself, oh God, if I had only done this or that or this, I could have. No. He was destined to win at this time. And that was it. And it was beyond reason. It was emotion. And, that happens sometimes in American politics, and it happened in 2016.
Well, so in your book, you also note that you've been friends with Donald Trump for 18 years now. But what you said in your book was that you felt like you could speak to him in ways that other staffers wouldn't dare, that you could tell him what you really were thinking and he wouldn't blow up at you. You mentioned you were just at the White House recently talking to him. This is a common thing we've been hearing in National Agenda this year. Just last week, it was revealed that John Kelly had warned Trump against getting a yes man for chief of staff, or he'd get impeached. Dan Pfeiffer, who was our first guest here at National Agenda, said, senior advisor to Obama, said he was emphasized how important it was to Obama to have people around him who challenged his perspective. Do you think this is an essential part of being a good leader, surrounding yourself with people who don't always agree with you?
Indispensable. I was saying this to the students earlier today. Like, listen, I was governor of New Jersey, the 10th largest state in the country, and the most powerful, McGee's gonna like this, the most powerful constitutional governorship in the country. I studied it. And so I had people kissing my rear end every day. Every day. Oh, Governor, you're brilliant. Governor, that proposal is outstanding. That speech was amazing. You handled that town hall with such great style. Like, listen, it's nice, but it doesn't make you any smarter. And doesn't make you any better. The people who make you smarter and better are the people who come in and say, did you really want to say that? Are you really going to turn down this deal? Are you really going to make that proposal now? Are you really going to trust that person? Those are the people who make you better. And it's indispensable to effective executive leadership. Indispensable. But listen, there are times when there has to be a deal between you and your staff. Sometimes they have to be permitted to speak to you with utter disrespect when you're not listening, and you got to give them a pass. You can't go like, you're fired, get out of here. You got to give them a pass. And they have to be willing to take heat from you when you're angry or emotional about something, and be willing to hang in there and come back and put their head in the mouth of the lion a second time. And I was incredibly fortunate as governor because I had an incredible group of people that worked with me in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I brought 29 assistant United States attorneys to the governor's office with me after I won, and spread them throughout government in different positions. So they knew me. They knew how I liked to lead. They knew my strengths. They knew my weaknesses. So not only could they do great things to make me better, as they had all 7 years I was U.S. attorney, but they could teach all the others. So a woman who actually runs my institute now, named Michelle Brown, who worked with me, was my counsel at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and was my appointments counsel in the governor's office. And she told me that in the first year, she spent a third of her time counseling cabinet members about how to deal with me. They would all come to her and go, okay, I got this bit of bad news. How do I do it? You know how to do it. And sometimes she'd teach them how to do it, and sometimes she'd say to them, I'll do it. Give it to me, I'll take it. You come in and just watch. You need people like that. And unfortunately for the president, he doesn't have almost anyone who does that for him. Almost. A couple of people, but not many, and not nearly enough.
Well, you end your book by saying, maybe the second half of the first Trump term will prove that compromise is not a dirty word. Compromise is one of your big emphases as a politician. You said maybe we can stick to our principles and also reach beyond our tribes. This really resonated with me because my students are reading a book about how we're tribal and we want to become part of the red team or the blue team, as you've mentioned. Do you think this is still possible in the Trump presidency? Do you still remain hopeful in this?
Not for the next year. We're going to go through impeachment and trial and then an election. The chance for him to do that's passed. Now, can we do that in the next 4 years? I'm skeptical, depending upon who the Democratic candidate is. I think there's one or two people over there who I think would take that approach. I think most of the rest of them would not, would take a more Trump-type approach, which has been get the uniforms on and get to hitting. And so, I'm not very hopeful about that at the moment, but I am hopeful in the longer term, and by the longer term I mean in the next 5 years, that this kind of thing is going to exhaust the American people. And they're going to be exhausted by the volume, and they're going to be exhausted by the lack of progress on things that they really care about. And I think the combination of the two will lead to a very, very different election in 2024. But it's not going to happen in the next year. In the next year, both sides have decided they don't want to do it. Democrats could have made a bunch of different decisions in Congress since they've been in charge of the House, whether it's regarding USMCA or infrastructure or some other issues where they might be able to build some common ground. And they've determined, no, that they're going to focus on impeachment. It's their call. They won the elections. Elections have consequences. But they have not contributed to building that opportunity either. And the president clearly hasn't. So I don't have any hope for that in the next year. We'll see, what happens beyond 2020, depending upon what the results of the election are going to be.
So picture yourself 2024 or leading up to 2024. Are you running?
Oh, God, I don't know yet. Listen, I don't think once you decide in your own mind, and it took me a while to decide this, that you could be president, then it's hard to stop wanting to be president. Because then you watch everything that goes on and you say to yourself, oh, I wouldn't have done that. Or I would have done this more aggressively or this less aggressively. Or you can't help yourself, at least I can't help myself, but to do that. So I would never rule it out. But the other thing I was saying tonight at dinner was that I can't do it again unless I think I have a chance to win. I felt like I had a legitimate chance to win in 2016. It didn't work out. But I never woke up in the morning during that race thinking, this is a lost cause. What the hell am I doing here in Iowa or New Hampshire? But, so I have no idea. You have to see what the atmosphere is like then, who else is running, what kind of support you can assemble for yourself, and all the rest of that. But I will say this, there's nothing else I want to run for. I couldn't imagine myself in the United States Senate. I'd rather commit suicide than be in the United States Senate. I mean, when the greatest part of your day is, oh, my bill just got marked up in the subcommittee. Once you've been a governor, you're like, come on, man. I'm supposed to get things done. I have an executive mentality. I want to have a task. I want to figure out how to accomplish the task, and I want to accomplish it, and I want to check it off and go to the next one. And when you're in Congress, especially in the Senate, because I don't need to get 51 votes, I got to get 60. Spare me. Someone else do it.
All right, well, let's move on to a congressional issue, which is the impeachment process. Just today, Representative Adam Schiff, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Democrat, announced that the first public impeachment hearings will kick off next Wednesday. They're going to look at William Taylor, the top American envoy in Ukraine, and George Kent, a top state Democratic official. On Friday, they'll hear from Marie Yovanovitch, the former American ambassador to Ukraine. So what should we expect to see now that this inquiry goes public, we have such little history of these impeachment proceedings happening in this democracy. What do you expect to see as this goes public? Will opinions towards impeachment shift? Will people pay attention to these hearings? Is this going to be part of the national dialogue?
A lot of questions there. Okay, let's break them down. First of all, what do I expect to hear? I expect to hear everything Adam Schiff's already been leaking. I mean, I assume that they're going to testify consistent with the excerpts that he's leaked. And we may get a little more color, but you can guarantee that he's leaked the best parts. In terms of what we're going to see, and there not having been a lot of these, I don't know what to expect from this because it's being run differently than it's ever been run before. You know, the two in recent times, I can't claim to be an expert on the Andrew Johnson impeachment, but in Nixon and Clinton, a formal vote was taken by the House. The Judiciary Committee ran the hearings, and they were done in public. This has been very different. No vote was taken until a week or so ago. The inquiry started without any vote, without an authorization by the People's House to even begin an inquiry. It's being run by Adam Schiff and the Intelligence Committee, which makes no historic sense. The only conclusion I can come to is that all these decisions are being made politically, and Nancy Pelosi has decided that Adam Schiff is a better face for this than Jerry Nadler, who is a New York veteran congressman who is chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I can guarantee you, knowing Jerry Nadler, he is not happy about the fact that he's not getting an opportunity to run these hearings. And Schiff discredited himself early by making that whole drama up about the transcript of the phone conversation between the president and the Ukrainian president, as if it wasn't bad enough, he had to make it worse and not let people know that he was dramatizing it. And why he was doing that, I really don't know. So listen, I have a very, what I'd call practical view of this. He will be impeached. It's just a matter of time. He will be impeached. The Democrats didn't start this to not finish it. This is a political judgment, not a factual judgment. They will impeach him, and then it will go to the Senate, and the Senate will not remove him because the Republicans, you're not going to get 20, which is what you need, 20 Republicans to vote to remove the President of the United States from office 9 or 10 months before a national election. And somebody said, well, why not? You know, if he's done these horrible things and he should be removed, to remove him. Let me just play out a scenario for you, which is, in my view, not only possible, but likely. Let's say, if they wanted to remove him, let's say they impeach him and they remove him in January, which is probably when the vote would happen. You think Donald Trump's running for re-election? After having been impeached and removed? You bet he is. Who's going to challenge him in the Republican primary? Is his vice president going to challenge his boss? I don't think so. Who is going to challenge Donald? It's not going to happen. So you can have a situation where they remove the President of the United States, and then he says, well, the hell with you people. You're 535 people. I'm going to let the American people decide. And I'm running. And I'm willing to bet you if that happened, he'd get the Republican nomination. And then you'd have a presidential race where the Republican nominee for president, one of the two major nominees, was the first person in American history who had been impeached and removed from office. Put aside the facts of this case. That's never going to happen. 20 Republican United States senators are not going to say, my judgment is more powerful, more important than the judgment of the American people. So I will bet you now what you will hear from any of the senators on the Republican side is, regardless of the facts here, it would be wrong for me to remove the duly elected president 10 months before the American people are going to decide for themselves who should be the president of the United States. And so we're going to leave it to the people. So I think, like, in terms of interest, which was your last question, the people who hate him will watch it nonstop and eat it up and be like, yeah, hit him again, right? The people who support him will go, waste the time, what's on Fox News? And Sean Hannity will be having some other show on something else that won't even mention, impeachment. So what I would say to Nancy Pelosi, who's someone I've known for a long time and who I consider a friend, is why are we doing this? Like, Nancy's as practical a politician as I know. Why are we doing it if we know what the outcome is already? And so, if they wanted to do a truly private, quiet investigation where they might uncover more facts that might actually lead to something different, a different conclusion, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But this process is flawed, and everyone's got their uniform on, and 20 Republicans are not taking a red jersey off and putting a blue jersey on between now and January. And that's what it would take, and I don't think it's going to happen. So, for the people who'll be entertained by it, they'll be entertained. But in the end, practically, I don't think you'll see anything different other than it take up a lot of oxygen, a lot of space in the political world between now and probably. My guess is that the Senate will aim to have this done before the State of the Union, and then try to give the president a clear path to give a State of the Union. And then they're not going to do any work anyway. 2020, it's like perpetual spring break in an election year. They won't work. They'll just go out and campaign and posture and get ready for November of 2020.
Well, so it's interesting that you say this, because you famously or infamously have been very assertive in your talk and how you communicate with people. You famously told a heckler to sit down and shut up.
I did.
Just a couple of months ago, though, you announced the launch of the Christie Institute at Seton Hall, where one goal is to foster civil dialogue. So I want to talk to you a little bit about civil dialogue, because that's kind of what we do at the Center for Political Communication.
Yep.
Demonstrating it, modeling it, helping people understand how to communicate effectively. I want you to explain what might seem dissonant to some, the contrast between your kind of like straightforward, assertive style of communicating and civil conversation.
Well, let's talk about sit down and shut up, since you brought it up. All you mentioned was sit down and shut up, because I'm the famous guy. And the famous guy, they just take the worst soundbite they can, and that's what they say. I wish we would have talked about the fact that we're going to talk about sit down and shut up, because I would have brought the clip for you, the whole clip. Mm-hmm. This was, sit down and shut up happened on the second anniversary of Hurricane Sandy, on the day of the second anniversary of Hurricane Sandy. I was in Belmar, New Jersey, opening up a new set of downtown stores which had been destroyed in Sandy, and now we're finally reopening. There was a crowd of about 500 people there. I was introduced by the Democratic mayor, who lauded what we had done to rebuild Belmar, and then I stood up to give my speech. And a Democrat activist who was running for the state legislature stood up in the middle of the crowd, held up a sign that was large enough to block all the cameras of all the news stations that were behind him, and started screaming in the middle of my speech about things that hadn't gotten done in Sandy within 2 years. So the beginning of my conversation was, I said, sir, listen, now's not the appropriate time, but my staff is right over there. If you'll move to over there and begin talking to them, as soon as I'm done with this speech, I'll come over and join the conversation, and we'll see if we can help you with your problem. He keeps screaming. I said, sir, we have 500 people here who are here to hear this talk and to open these stores. Please sit down so that we can continue with this, and I promise you, I will meet with you privately afterwards to try to help you fix your problem. He continues to yell at me and then starts to yell personally insulting things to me. And you never cared about the people down here. You never done anything for them. You're selfish. You're this. So after all that, I said to him, listen, enough now, okay? These people didn't come to listen to you, they came to listen to me. And either go over there and I'll have the conversation with you, or don't. Roll up your sleeves and help people to rebuild these towns, or not, whatever you want to do, but until then, sit down and shut up. Now, I would argue to you that that is pretty close to a model for civility in public conversation when you give some jerk 3 chances to meet privately with the governor, to talk to him about whatever his particular problem is and try to help him fix it. And when you finally realize that after 3 times, that's not what he wants. He's a candidate for public office who's trying to get attention. And I talked to my friend Brian Williams, who was the anchor of NBC Nightly News that made that the second story on the nightly news that night, and only played Sit Down and Shut Up. And I called Brian and I said, you know, Brian, do you watch the whole clip? He goes, no, my producer just showed me that part of it. I said, thank you for your thorough, deep, investigative journalism. So there's nothing dissonant. In fact, my entire career is about being blunt and direct towards an end. So for 8 years, I have a Democratic legislature. And we accomplished more in those 8 years with a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature than any governor of the last 5. And I didn't do that by not being civil. In fact, quite the opposite. I worked to develop relationships, personal relationships, with the important legislators in the legislature to make sure that I followed the rule that a mentor of mine told me years ago, which is, Chris, it's harder to hate up close. And when you make friendships with people, it's harder for them to say no to you and harder for them to hate you just because they disagree with you. So what the Institute is trying to do, and did in our first lecture, which was a conversation between me and another shy, retiring guy, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, was to show people that that can work. If the personal relationship works, the professional relationship will come. But if you have no personal relationship, then all you have are your political differences, and then you have no common ground. Andrew Cuomo and I worked for 7 years together as the governors of New Jersey and New York with starkly different views on many issues, but I will tell you, we never once had a fight, never once had a cross word. Now, he will say, as he said at the Institute, that the reason for that is that we both had Sicilian mothers. So we understood each other in a very unique way. And he's partially right. We trusted each other. We gave each other a chance to know each other, and that's what the Institute's about. And I'll never apologize for Sit Down and Shut Up, because I was there. And I know that I did the best I could 3 times with 500 people waiting to hear the speech and the owners of the stores waiting for me to cut the ribbons to their stores, which they had been waiting for 2 years. And this guy decided he was more important than those 500 people or the people in the stores. So context is king. Context is everything. You can take any little comment from anybody out of context and make them look however you want to make them look. And that's what happens to people in public life, okay? So you got to live with it. But when you're out now and you get to come to forums like this, damn, man, you get to explain it. And that's why I'm explaining it. Because in the end, be careful about what you listen to and what you believe in terms of the way it's reported. Because soundbite politics is sometimes effective, but always dangerous.
Well, in building off of that, I think it's interesting to think about how we talk about civility versus politeness. And your book is subtitled In Your Face Politics. So can you be civil and also in your face?
Sure. Listen, the style of being blunt and direct and outspoken is to move people. And the only way you force compromise in a political context is to move people from where they start. If we don't try to persuade, and we don't try to cajole, and we don't try to force, no one's ever going to move. Because you believe what you believe. There's a particular bill. You believe what you believe about the bill. I disagree. I believe something else. You're in the legislature. I'm the governor. if you pass it, I'm vetoing it. You're not going to pass the bill that I want. How do I convince you to pass something I'll sign? Well, part of that is moving them, moving public opinion. So, believe me, in-your-face politics is done in a bunch of different ways, sometimes in public, sometimes in private. The worst moment for some legislatures in my governorship was to be asked to come to the governor's office. I don't know what the equivalent is at a university anymore. Like when I was here, it was like if you got called to the dean of students, it wasn't good, right? I don't know what the equivalent is, but
Do we have the Dean of Students here tonight?
it wasn't good when I was here, I can
was
tell you
here
that.
at dinner.
It wasn't good. But like, you get called in, sometimes the in-your-face part happens privately. Sometimes when they come in, they think you're going to get in their face. You don't. You bring them in and you go, oh man, I really need your help. I'm in a bad way on this one. And if you help me on this one, I promise you, I'm going to remember you when you need something. There'll be something in your district, something that's really important to you, some person who's important to you. And I'm telling you right now, you have a chip to cash in. And if you come to cash it in as long as it's reasonable, I'll do it. Sometimes that's what you do. Sometimes in public, you try to be sweet and kind and cuddly. When you're fighting like the teachers union, it don't work. Because they're putting a billboard saying Chris Christie hates kids. Well, when that happens, it's not like, please understand me. No. It's like, oh, really? Here we go. Let's go. But you're not fighting. See, here's the difference right now. Sometimes I think the president fights just to fight. I fight to force compromise. I fight to move people from where they are now to a position that's closer to mine so that I can then move closer to them and get something done. So yeah, in-your-face politics, but like I used to say to the press corps all the time, I don't have just one club in my bag. I don't just have a driver. I have a 5-iron, I have a pitching wedge, and I have a putter. And I use all of them really well. And I know when to use them. I don't use the driver on the green. When I'm close, I get the putter out. So it's the part that makes you most famous, but it's not the only club in the bag. And if it is, you're not going to be successful.
All right. Well, pardon me. I think it's time to get the audience involved a little
Excellent.
bit. I have many more questions for you, but we can talk about those later.
Okay.
So we're going to get the audience involved, and Charlotte should be getting the microphone wherever Charlotte might be. I see. Yes. Okay. So we're going to start with a few questions from my National Agenda students. You met with them earlier today.
I did.
And then we're going to follow up with, we had a basket out front and some note cards for people to submit their questions for you. So we'll follow up with my student questions with those questions. So thank you, Charlotte. Alyssa is our first questioner. She's right there in the white. You can stand up. There you go. Alyssa is a political science major, and this is her question.
Hi, Governor Christie. My name is Alyssa, and I'm also a New Jersey native. My question to you has to do with rhetoric. You have often been praised for having a no-nonsense approach to politics, speaking bluntly on different issues, and not shying away from using some strong language. Though this has ultimately served to help you in your political career, was there ever a time you felt you went too far or came across the wrong way besides the sit down and shut up incident?
Well, I would say I don't think I came across the wrong way in the sit down and shut up incident. I think I did exactly what I was supposed to, but yeah, there were definitely times. Yeah, I'll tell you one time. I was doing a town hall meeting regarding a higher education merger that I wanted to do, which we ultimately accomplished, which was merging our medical school into Rutgers University. It was, when it finally got done, the largest public education merger in American history. There was a lot of controversy about it, and I was doing town hall meetings about it. And a guy got up one time and announced that he was a law student at Rutgers in Camden. And one of the parts of the plan was that Rutgers Camden campus was going to be merged with Rowan University, which is also down in South Jersey, near here. And he was opposed to that. So he was letting out his opposition. And I kept trying to then answer his question, and he kept interrupting me and saying more. And I said, so just let me answer. And he said, I'm a law student and I know my rights. And I said to him, well, let me tell you something. If you go to court and you interrupt the judge, in the same way you've been interrupting me, he's going to throw your rear end in jail for contempt. Now, if I had left it just at that, it would have been perfect. But what I said was, if you talk to a judge like that and interrupt him, he's going to throw your rear end in jail for contempt, jerk. What I did not know, which aggravated the situation, that's bad enough, but then find out that the law student is actually also a Navy SEAL. So the headline in the paper the next day is, Christie calls Navy SEAL a jerk. That's a mistake. Wish I could have taken that one back. And there's more. I mean, listen, if you're going to be outspoken and you're going to be, in a media market like I'm in, the New York and Philadelphia media markets, you're going to have moments. And there's more. We could spend more time, painfully, on some of the stuff that I wish I hadn't said. But the upside of that, though, is that my constituents never had to wonder what I was thinking. I was not an international man of mystery, right? So, there's a pluses and minuses to it. But that time, I just went overboard. I could have just stopped and throw your rear end in jail for contempt. If I just could have stopped, I would have been fine. But I threw in jerk at the end, and that was bad. And you're governor, you shouldn't be doing that. Just shouldn't. It's not excusable. And I later called the guy and apologized to him privately. I, of course, put out the perfunctory public apology. But before I did that, I called him personally and said, listen, I was wrong to call you that, and I apologize.
Yeah.
He was very good about it. He accepted the apology, and, then we moved on.
Name
But
calling is
he would get his rear end thrown in jail, by the way. If you interrupt a judge like that in court, you can get away with that once or twice, but not too often.
But name calling is that civil?
No, it was a mistake. I mean, listen, civility.
Just checking.
But wait a second. Civility does not require perfection.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And if listen, this is one of the problems with politics. If we require perfection, the perfect candidate, whether that's perfect in their conduct or perfect that they agree with us on everything, we're going to get one of two things. Either a hugely disappointed electorate, because nobody's perfect, or a whole group of liars as public officials, because if they tell you that they agree with you on everything, they're lying. Because the only person you agree with all the time is you. No one else. Wait till you get married, you'll definitely know that.
That's a great point. Thank you. All right. Our next question comes from Molly. I think, Charlotte, she's over on this side. So Molly is a political science major, and she has a question based on one of the speakers we had earlier this semester.
All right.
Hi, Governor
Hey,
Christie.
Molly.
So a few weeks ago, CNN commentator Tara Setmeyer was our guest speaker, and she said she considers herself a true conservative and also a never-Trumper. Bill Maher called you a Republican classic, which insinuates you hold the same ideals as a true conservative, yet clearly you are not a never-Trumper. What to you defines a true conservative? Is it allegiance to party, allegiance to values, or do you think there's a spectrum?
Allegiance to values. Right? You believe in what you believe, and I think that's the way you define a true anything. Right? Remember, we were talking earlier today, ideas are more powerful than people. And I think that, but people get confused all the time. Like, I'm not a never-Trumper. I'm not. But he wasn't my first choice for president. I was. And I ran against him. And I fought pretty hard against him. So I have my problems. But remember too, and this is my problem, with some people who are being very doctrinaire about this, I think, is elections, whether we like it or not, we don't get to vote most of the time. We don't get to vote for who we want to vote for. We get to vote for who's left. And so in 2016, there was a choice left to us, all of us, between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Forget my opinion. Objectively, the two most unpopular candidates for president in the last 100 years. They were. Remember this, 20% of the people who voted in 2016 said they didn't like either one of them. 20% of people who voted. Think about how many people stayed home who held that opinion. So, I'm like, okay, I got to make a choice. I'm not going to not vote. I vote for him. I agree with him more than I agree with her on ideas. So I think what conservatism is about, the same way what liberalism is about ideas. And that's why I don't think if you voted for Donald Trump, it doesn't make you a real conservative, or if you're a never Trumper, it doesn't make you a real Republican. I think you be loyal and true to your ideas, as I said in the beginning, things that you believe in your heart. And then, you could be the most effective advocate for those positions as you can be. So again, we'll all be faced with another choice, I suspect, next November. And I don't know, pick anybody that a Democrat would support in a primary. If their person doesn't win the primary, they're stuck with the choice of not who they wanted, but who's left. And when I voted for Trump, it wasn't who I wanted to vote for. It's who was left, because I was the guy I wanted to vote for.
Thank you, Molly. All right, our last question before we open it up to questions from the audience is over on this side. Charlotte, I'm making you run back and forth. Jagger, who's also a political science major.
Hi, Governor Christie.
Hey.
Could you go a little bit more in depth about what it would take for you to run for president again?
Yeah, I'd have to have Mary Pat's support. I'd have to have my children's support. I'd have to believe I could win. I'd have to think the atmosphere was conducive to my style of leadership. And I'd have to believe that I could honestly make a difference in the country. That's it. Those 5. If I check those 5 boxes, I run. If I don't check all 5, I don't run. And listen, I was getting begged to run in 2012. Begged. I had a room of 60 billionaires and Henry Kissinger, all standing up and saying, you have to run. You must run against Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney can't beat Barack Obama. You could. I held what now seems like a quaint idea. I said I wasn't ready to be president. I had only been governor for 17 months, and I didn't feel ready to be president. That seems like a ridiculous thought today. So these decisions are intensely personal. I remember Ken Langone, who was one of my national finance chairmen, one of the founders of Home Depot. When I told him I wasn't going to run in 2012, Ken said to me, Chris, you have to run. I'll be with you every step of the way. And I said, Kenny, no, you won't. I said, when I'm in Iowa, you're going to be at your house in Palm Beach. You're not going to be with me every step of the way. So don't say you will. It's an intensely personal decision to put your life completely on hold and the life of your loved ones to try to serve your country. You got to really believe that you can make a difference and that you can win. And so those are the 5 factors. And those were the 5 boxes that I didn't check all of them in 12. I did check all of them in 16. And as for 24, we'll see. I can't predict, but it is the only job I would run for again, for sure.
Thank you, Jagger. All right, so we also asked the audience to submit some questions on note cards before the event, and my teaching assistant, Olivia, is backstage bringing me some of said questions. Thank you so
Great job,
much.
Olivia. Thank you. A little applause for Olivia, please. Thank you.
All right, so I'm reading these sight unseen.
Good.
Do you feel the members of the Mueller team had any obligation to report that Robert Mueller was suffering mental decline? Why did they let him impeach himself?
Well, listen, I understand the question. I understand the question. I have enormous respect and affection for Bob Mueller. When I was U.S. Attorney for 7 years, he was the director of the FBI. And I worked with him on numerous occasions on very important cases. He is an American patriot. And the implication in the question is offensive to me. Really offensive. And it's part of what's going on with our politics today. Whoever wrote that question doesn't agree with Bob Mueller and doesn't think he did a great job when he gave his testimony. He didn't do a great job. It wasn't his best day. But we're going to conclude from that he was in mental decline? Who's the physician in this audience who diagnosed that? It's outrageous. Bob Mueller did a very thorough and fair job, in my opinion, in investigating a very complicated set of facts under very difficult circumstances and extraordinary scrutiny. And you know why he was in front of that committee? Because they forced him in front of the committee. His staff asked them not to call Bob Mueller in front of that committee. He gave a brief speech where he said, "My report speaks for itself. I have nothing else to say." And the Democrats, for purely political reasons, to try to score points against the president, dragged him in front of the committee. It was unfair to him and his legacy, because now you have some people, like the author of the question, who believes that, Bob Mueller has some type of dementia. I have no idea whether he does or he doesn't. Although I will tell you, I was interviewed by the Mueller team. Pleasant situation that was. And I met with Bob that day for a while. And this was about 7 or 8 weeks before his testimony. I was one of the last witnesses to be interviewed. And I noted no decline in Bob Mueller when I sat and spoke with him. Sometimes, when we're being forced to do something we don't want to do, we have a bad day. And he had a bad day. But I'll give you one anecdote about Bob Mueller to show you what kind of guy this guy is. He was the U.S. Attorney in San Francisco under George Bush 41. And when Bill Clinton came into office, he fired all of the U.S. attorneys across the country to bring in his own. And Bob Mueller went to a private firm at that time in 1993, making $1 million a year in San Francisco. About a year and a half or so later, Bob Mueller called Eric Holder, who at that time in the Clinton administration was the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. And he said, "Eric, I want a job." He said, "Bob, you're the U.S. Attorney in San Francisco. You're at one of the biggest law firms in the world. You want a job from me?" He goes, "Give me a job in the local side of the D.C. office prosecuting murders. I just want to get back into the justice business." Bob Mueller, who had served as United States Attorney and Assistant Attorney General of the United States, went back and served as a line prosecutor in the Washington, D.C. local office and prosecuted street crime as a local prosecutor because he wanted to be back in the business of justice. Gave up $1 million salary to do it. Let me tell you something, everybody. We need more Bob Muellers in this country, not fewer. And he is, and always will be to me, an American patriot. And any of this conversation that's occurred, and that's not the first time I've heard it, of people who denigrate him and what he did and how he did it, it's shameful, in my opinion. He deserves much better. By the way, not to mention also that he's a Vietnam veteran and a decorated, wounded Vietnam veteran. This man served his country, and he deserves our respect and our admiration and our thanks, not questioning his motives and his mental condition.
Well, on a different note,
That's direct but civil.
a communication major asks, what's the most difficult aspect, or what was the most difficult aspect of being a governor in this day and age of advanced technology and little to no privacy? You are kind of famously the YouTube governor. How was that adapting to governing in this new age of technology?
Mostly great. Mostly great. I found it liberating. We got to put out our own message, unfiltered. I said it, we put it out there. I had an extraordinary communications director who later, she was a 28-year-old woman who I hired as my communications director in the governor's office. You know, she was 5 years out of George Washington University. And she understood this stuff long before anybody else did, on a political sense. And that's how I kind of became the YouTube governor. I was the first one to really aggressively use YouTube. I loved it also because in a blue state with a generally left of center media, I got to go over their heads. You know, you don't want to cover what I'm saying? Don't worry about it. I'll put it out to everybody. I don't care if you cover it or not. And then they had to cover me going over their heads, which was a lot of fun, right? So I loved it. Now, the fact that everybody in America now has a camera with them and a video camera with them every minute, let me tell you something. I am so thankful that I am not you, that I did not go to college when everybody in the room had a camera and a video camera. If they had, I can assure you, and I think McGee will vouch for this, I would not have been governor and not a candidate for president of the United States. That part of it, the invasive part of it, is difficult because you never, ever are off the record anymore. Ever. And you have to understand that and be willing to live with it. And that makes it a little bit harder because everybody, the same way you can go over everybody's head, you know, some knucklehead with a camera can take a video of you and post it on his, you know, tweet it out or post it on Instagram or whatever, and then you're doing lots of splaining, as Ricky Ricardo used to say.
Well, and I will say, on our trek through Newark this evening, you FaceTimed with a student's mother. We've had selfies. We've had group selfies. I don't know what those are called, but so.
Yeah, no, listen.
It's been fun to engage with the students through technology.
Yeah, and listen, that's what fame is these days. You know, I didn't do this to become famous, but I'm famous now. And like, you got to live with it, the good and the bad, you know? And so, you know, but as I've, you know, Mary Pat reminded me all the time when I would have some moments where I'd complain about it. She said to me, you know, I was here. Nobody put a gun to your head. You did this voluntarily. Like, no, enough complaining, you know? And I think that's part of what life is like today. And I wish people would be a little bit more responsible with it, but you know, you adjust you try to adjust your conduct accordingly. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes not.
And I give you credit. You stood for every selfie I think that you were requested of.
You know, it reminds me of Joe DiMaggio used to say. He used to say to Joe DiMaggio when he was a little bit hurt, you know, and his teammates would say to him, Joe, take the day off. Like, why are you going out there and playing when you're hurt? He said, today someone's coming and this will be the only time they may ever get to see me play. And I don't want to disappoint them. The students were with me as we were walking around campus today and watching all these people come up to me, and the woman with talk to my mother, you know, like, I have her right now on FaceTime, talk to her. I'm like, what's her name? You know, let's start with that. But the way I view it all the time is, that's probably the only time those people are ever going to get to meet me. And what impression do I want to leave them with? That I was too big and too important, because that's the way they'll take it, fair or unfair, that I was too big and too important to stop for a selfie. I was too big, too important to stop for an autograph or something like that. I would much rather take the extra time when someone's nice to you to return that kindness. And if they're excited about seeing me, when did I get so big, that like I shouldn't be excited that someone's excited to see me? So I think that's the way you have to do it in today's world, and I think that's part of the gig, as I say to my kids, and you live with it. They complain, but there's other good advantages they get too, that when those things happen, I ask them if this is the bad part of being the son or a daughter of a governor, and then that usually shuts them up.
I won't bring up the Adam Levine incident, but
Yeah, the Adam Levine incident.
yeah, your daughter got to meet Adam Levine because
Yes,
of you.
because I was on Saturday Night Live, and Adam Levine was the musical guest, and so we rehearsed all day together. And so my daughter and her friend came to the show, and they were in my dressing room. Yes, my dressing room. And I was telling her, I go, you won't believe it. I said, been hanging with Adam Levine today. She goes, stop. I said, no, I haven't. She goes, you've seen him. You haven't been hanging with him. I go, no. We actually ate lunch together. We hung together. Come on. And she's like rolling her eyes. And this is the time when I absolutely know that God exists. Because when she got done rolling her eyes, right then, walking past my open dressing room door was Adam Levine. And I said, hey, Adam. He goes, Gov, what's up? I said, come in here. I want you to meet some people. And so I said, this is my daughter, Sarah, who was 16 at the time. So you understand why Adam Levine was so important to her. I said, this is my daughter, Sarah, and her friend, Lorem. I just wanted to introduce you. And they were like, and Adam Levine, who totally gets the joke as well, he's a pro. He says, Sarah, can I ask you for a favor? She said, yeah. And he said, can I have a picture with you? I'd love to have a picture with the governor's daughter. And she said, absolutely. So he takes the picture, he high-fives me, he walks out, and I look at her, I go, don't roll your eyes at me again, okay? I am besties with Adam Levine, baby. Don't mess around with me. So every once in a while, we get to, give them some benefit that stops their complaining a little bit.
All right. Well, if you'll forgive me, Gov.
Yeah.
I usually wrap things up with, I like to call myself, or think that my students like to call me, Doc Hoff. Like, it's cool.
Doc
like,
Hoff? Okay.
Yeah, like,
I'll call you Doc Hoff.
I'm a doctor, but like, it's cool, right?
Doc Hoff, yeah.
Thank
All right,
you.
Doc Hoff, what are we doing?
So what I like to do is what I call Doc Hoff's quick take.
Kind of like a lightning round kind of thing, Doc Hoff?
A little bit.
All right.
And I actually could have a lightning round. Before I do that, let's do a little bit of a lightning round.
All right.
Beach or shore?
Sure.
Well, of course.
Right.
Red or blue?
Red or blue? I'm red.
Purple.
Sometimes, when I need to be.
All right. Long ties or short ties?
Long. But not as long as Trump.
Okay. All right. Well,
There's a good story in the book about that, by the way. And if you get the book, there's a great story about why he wears his ties that long. You'll like it. And it's totally, by the way, in character.
it is. So actually, that's a great question to ask before we lead into this. Is one of the questions you get asked a lot because you're friends with Trump is he the same in person as he appears on television?
Painfully so. Yeah. I mean, people ask me all the time, what's he really like? I go, that's it. You see it. I am telling you, there is 99% of the time, there is not a whit's worth of difference between the Donald Trump you see on television and the Donald Trump I had lunch with in the dining room next to the Oval Office 2 weeks ago. Not a whit's worth of difference. None. And so, people are like, really? I'm like, oh no, I'm serious. Exactly that way. That's it. That's him.
So why be friends with him?
Why not? Listen, when I first became friends with Donald Trump, I was the brand new U.S. attorney in New Jersey. And he's a real estate developer in New York and a casino owner in New Jersey. The way I met him was his sister, his older sister, Marianne Trump Barry, was a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge. I was the new U.S. attorney, so I was going around to visit all the judges and pay courtesy calls on them. I went to pay a courtesy call on her. At the end of our conversation, she said to me, would you do me a favor? I said, sure, Judge, what do you want? She goes, would you have dinner with my little brother? I said, your little brother? You mean Donald? She said, yeah, my little brother, he wants to have dinner with you. I said, well, tell him to call the office and schedule a date. She goes, now, I don't know if I even still believe this, but if it's true, it's probably the last time he thought this way. She said, he'd rather have me arrange it. He thinks calling you directly would be inappropriate. By the way, that gets even funnier on the ride home. When you start to think about all the ways that that's funny. So I said, fine, you call my office and set it up. And I went to dinner with him in New York, just the two of us. And this is what it's like. We sit down, we're at John George, which at the time and still is a pretty famous restaurant in New York, which is connected to one of his hotels. Long story short, John George himself comes out to take our order, of course, because you're with Donald Trump. So he says, John George, remember that appetizer you made me the other night, the special one? We'll take 2 of those. And then the entree that you did with it, we'll take 2 of those. Okay? Yes, sir, Mr. Trump. He walks away. I'm like, did you just order for me? Yeah, you'll love it. Don't worry about it. You'll love it. Okay. And it's the big deal, right? They have the big, silver domes over the food. They bring it out, and then they present it to you, And the appetizer is scallops. I am allergic to scallops. So he's talking the whole time anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm cutting these and moving them around my plate to look polite, but I'm going to get sick, right? I can't do that. Next comes out the main course, lamb. I detest lamb. I mean, dry heave, gagging, hate it. So I've cut a couple of pieces, but I don't eat anything. And finally, he comes up for air, and he notices that I'm not eating the lamb. And he goes, is it not cooked correctly? I said, no, it's cooked fine. And he said, why aren't you eating it? And I said, because I hate lamb. And he said, why'd you order it? I said, I didn't. You ordered it for me. And he goes, oh, yeah, all right. So we get done with dinner, and this is typical Donald Trump. We leave. We go to leave. And we walk out of the door, and there is a touristy-looking couple standing right in front of us. Now, I'm the brand new U.S. attorney, so no one knows who the hell I am. And they go, oh, Mr. Trump, we heard you were inside. My husband, the woman says, is an enormous fan of yours. Can we please have a picture? Now, remember, this is 2002, so we didn't have these. We had those disposable black and yellow Kodak cameras. So can I please take a picture? And Trump hates taking pictures, hates it. Even now, he hates it. So he says, no, I can't. She goes, please, Mr. Trump, we've been waiting out here for 45 minutes. He goes, okay, all right, coming over. So the guy walks over, Trump puts his arm around him, and the woman's pushing the button and it's not clicking. Now, for old guys like me and McGee, we know that means they hadn't wound it. But she's so flustered, she doesn't know what the hell to do. And he goes, sweetheart, come on, come on. And she goes, it's not working, Mr. Trump, just give me a second, it's not working. And he looks at her and he says, sweetheart, let's do this next time we get together. And he turns around and walks away and gets into his limousine and he's gone. And she goes, we're not going to get together again. And I said, I think that was the point. The next morning, he calls me to review for me what a great dinner it was. Wasn't it great? It was spectacular. It was incredible. And then he says to me, by the way, how about that line with the woman? We'll do this the next time we get together. Was that beautiful or what? I said, it was quite something, Donald. So you're friends with him. There is a side to him that I've gotten to know over these years that is kind and is generous and does a lot of really wonderful things for people that he never talks about. And during Hurricane Sandy and a bunch of other crises that happened over time, he was incredibly generous in that way. And he's fun. Now he's president. It's a lot different. But like when he was a real estate developer in New York and you were going out to dinner with him, I remember the first time he brought Melania to dinner. That made things a lot better. I guarantee you that. My wife and I came to that dinner and Melania shows up And she's wonderful. She's incredibly smart. She's very tough on him. It's great to watch. She's the only person who can shut him up. It's great to see. And she's a wonderful, kind, great person. And after the first dinner that we had with her when he was dating her, we get in the car and I said to Mary Pat, so what'd you think? And she goes, I can't do dinner with her again. And I said, why not? She goes, he's staring at her. You're staring at her. For God's sakes, I'm staring at her. She's so good looking. Like I don't want to be there. Everybody's staring at her when we go to dinner. So they got better when he brought her around. But he's fun, and he's been fun over the years to be friends with. Never thought we'd run against each other, and that made it a little more difficult. But you know, it's important to be that a president has friends who've known him for a long time and who can tell him the truth. And that's part of my job now.
Well, I think you effectively stole my quick take.
Oh, do it anyway, Doc.
No, I'm going to skip ahead, actually.
All right.
I was going to talk about cancel culture, but I'm actually going to skip ahead to this video
Okay.
that describes a new initiative that we're doing here at the University of Delaware.
What is something you hate but wish you loved?
Yes.
Why?
I'm not a big fan of math, but when it's added into something that I'm passionate about, like chemistry, then
very good.
it's not something I'm interested in. But I want to be able to love it because it is something that's going to be very involved in my major and my field that I'm going to be involved in later in the future.
I'll tell you a secret. So, when I went through grad school, one of the things that I noticed was that every class that I hated the most, I ended up being the most important thing I ever took later on in my life. So I just remember that. But I know exactly what you're saying. There's some things you struggle with it. It's not something you really like,
Right.
but it comes back and becomes really important at some point.
Right.
So try and keep that in mind.
So this is a new initiative started by National Agenda students called Free Intelligent Conversations, adapted from a national nonprofit movement. And I encourage you, if you're walking around campus and you see a student holding this sign, to engage them in a conversation. So the question that was our dean, John Palesko. He wasn't able to be here tonight, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to show a video of him while he wasn't here and embarrass him. But he was talking about a student on the green, and the question that he got was, what do you hate that you wish you loved? And I thought I'd ask you, what do you hate that you wish you loved?
Vegetables.
Vegetables.
Yeah.
You-
Because Mary Pat's like, I mean, it's been 35 years of her killing me. How couldn't you eat this? How can't you eat that? I don't like it. What? Come on, try this, try that. I just wish I could love it just to stop the bickering.
Is there any one vegetable?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like string beans, I like carrots, but like when you get beyond like string beans and carrots, it gets very dicey. Don't like broccoli, don't like cauliflower.
No Brussels sprouts?
No, God, no. No. Really bad. So like string beans, carrots, I'm good.
All right.
And which she tells me are fake vegetables. They're not real vegetables.
I think she knows what she's talking about.
And there's no doubt. Like that's why I wish I could love them. Like I don't want to not like them, but I don't.
Well,
And I'm
either-
like 57 now. It ain't happening. Like I'm not gonna all of a sudden really like it. I don't think. But you know.
Either way, I think that the essence of the things that you've been talking to us about all day today, and the essence of what this program is about, is just to observe and recognize the humanity in each other and realize that not everybody likes vegetables.
That's right. They don't.
All right, I'm going to finish up here by talking about, oops, is this working? Oop, there we go. Oh, no. Our audio essay contest is called Speak Up. You can actually win cash awards for this contest. It's open to all students. Tell your story about your perceptions and your experiences in this democracy. Are you a new resident of this democracy? Are you an immigrant? Have you lived here a long time? Talk about your family's history. And then finally, our next speaker, which is our last speaker, there we go. John Della Volpa is the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School of Institute of Politics. They just released their polling yesterday about millennials. He's been focusing on young people for the last 20 years. The Washington Post called him one of the world's leading authorities on global sentiment, opinion, and influence. So I look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks on November 20th at the same time to learn about millennials' perspectives, what's going on with politics. So I'd like to end by giving a big blue hen thank you to Governor Christie.